Momingorom yar sudoi chati betam sudok di yoi doi dom. Yar sudoi dom baby kai kasi momingoro chetan. Yonenem yon kalemni yonenem yoni yonenem yoni yonenem.
Yin pin, penamaishchok na penchuyim, yamana maidakwaya makpapayatina. Today we're going to learn how to borrow words from Konkow and Nisenan. This is another way to get missing words in Maidu. Then we're going to learn about formal speeches in Maidu and how you might give a formal speech yourself. Maidu has two close cousin or sister languages, Konkow and Nisenan. Mountain Maidu, Konkow, and Nisenan are known as Maidu-ize languages, and all three are believed to have come from one mother language hundreds of years ago. As the three groups moved apart and became separated from each other, the languages each developed in their own unique ways, and eventually the people had a lot of trouble, or maybe could not, understand each other. There are only a few elderly native Konkow speakers and no native speakers of Nisenan left, but we do have written sources, dictionaries, grammar books, and stories written in the languages, as well as some recordings. In this lesson, we'll learn how to get some of the words missing in Mountain Maidu by borrowing them from Konkow and Nisenan, and then Maidu-izing them, which you'll see what that means. For comparison's sake, I'm going to write the Konkow and Nisenan words in fishhead, even though that's not how they're written in their own dictionaries and word lists. Since these three languages stemmed from the same mother language, it makes sense that they share a lot of the same words. And if one of the languages is missing a word, you should be able to get it from one of the other languages. You might be thinking, you're asking me to borrow words from languages I don't even know? Yes, but I will post links on our Facebook page under Files to where you can get word lists, dictionaries, and grammar books in these languages. Starting with Konkow, turn to page 159 in the Modern Maidu workbook. Here are just a few words in Konkow that are identical to Mountain Maidu words. In both languages, we have ba, salt, eti, older sister, heske, friend or relative, itu, be sick, ko, snow, etc. Then on the next page, page 160, is a list of just some of the words that are almost identical. The only difference is the stress, that is, which part of the word is said louder. For example, in Mountain Maidu, we have amadi, but in Konkow, it's amadi, with the stress on the first part of the word, ah. Notice that difference, amadi in Mountain Maidu and amadi in Konkow. Going down the list, we have bumi for bone in Konkow and bumi in Mountain Maidu. Bini is net in Konkow, bini in Mountain Maidu. Going down to the fourth from the bottom, kule is woman in Konkow, but what is it in Mountain Maidu? Kule. When you borrow a word from Konkow, you may need to change the stress. That's one of the ways we Maidu-ize, make it more like Maidu. Now, how will you know how to change the stress? Well, in a lot of cases, you won't know. But if you know a related word in Mountain Maidu, use the stress for that related word. On pages 160 to 161, you can practice borrowing Konkow words and change the stress based on a related word in Maidu. For example, on page 161, third one down, Konkow has a word for drawer or place to store stuff, which we've lost in Mountain Maidu. The word is hespoyoku. But how do we know the stress will be the same in Mountain Maidu on the first syllable? Because we have a related word, hespoyoyo, in our dictionary, meaning various things. And just like Konkow, the stress is on the first syllable, hes. So we don't have to change the stress when we borrow the Konkow word for drawer. Hespoyoku. Bebamwe. Hespoyoku. A lot of these will be like that, where we don't have to change the stress. But let's go down to the next to the last one on the page. Window. Konkow has a word for window, cheku. We can see that this word has see or look, che, in it. But in Mountain Maidu, che is not the stressed syllable. If we add anything onto che, any ending or infix, the stress falls on the next syllable, like chedom and chekas. So we have to change the stress on the word for window when we borrow it from Konkow. Instead of cheku, what are we going to say for window? Cheku. Makika. Just like Mountain Maidu, Konkow has its own genuine Konkow parts, including infixes. Some of the Konkow infixes are exactly like Mountain Maidu. Turn to page 164. At the top of the page, we see that Konkow also has the infixes dikno, ti, ta, to, y, and no. Then there are other infixes that are similar to Mountain Maidu. Some of them just drop the last letter of the infix. For example, Konkow uses ch instead of chui to mean be unable to do. Konkow often uses da instead of dao, do for doi, go or ka for koi, ki for kit, mi for mit, and me for man. As you can see in this list on page 164, when a final letter is dropped from an infix in Konkow, the vowel might get longer. This is represented by a colon after the vowel. For example, instead of Mountain Maidu men, meaning not, Konkow might have meh. Do you hear how that sound lasts longer than a regular sound? Meh. Other Konkow infixes are a little different from Mountain Maidu. Like the Konkow u infix has the same meaning as the Mountain Maidu nu, do for a while or continuously. The Mountain Maidu infix poto, almost do, is puto in Konkow. Some Konkow infixes are completely different from Mountain Maidu infixes. For example, Konkow has an infix tuito, which means the same as the Mountain Maidu infix yewe. Do it going back or returning. When you're borrowing a word from Konkow, you're going to want to convert the Konkow infix into a Maidu one, and that's what we mean by Maidu-izing. Make it like Maidu. So let's look at this list of words we might need and how we can borrow from Konkow but adapt the infix. These are all done for you because, frankly, it's a little hard. Not only are you adjusting the stress, but you're also changing the infix from a language you don't really know. On page 165, second one down, Yawi buy on credit my pay yaharom, esanudom yamaka. Yawi koyankawi wayani wotauti kupam, kayan kes buy on credit my pay. By the way, the Konkow word for Konkow is koyankawi, valley, land. Bebamwep koyankawi. Yawi koyankawi wayani wotauti kupam, kayan kes buy on credit my pay. How would you Maidu-ize this word, wotauti, buy on credit? In Maidu, we have a related word, wota, put down on, with a different stress. So first we're going to change the stress to the Maidu stress, wota instead of wota. Behesado. Then what? The ta and t infixes are the same between the two languages, so we leave them the same. But what about the u infix in the Konkow word? What do we change that to? Nu. As we saw from the list on page 164, The U infix in Konkow is the new infix in Mountain Maidu. So borrowing from Konkow, what's our new word for buy on credit? Wotanuti. Beba moya. Wotanuti. Now let's go to the sixth one down. A grove of trees or orchard. The Konkow word is chakatopa. What Mountain Maidu root do you see in this word? Cha, tree. This has the same stress in Maidu and Konkow, so you don't have to change the stress. The k and to infixes are the same for both languages. But what about that pa ending? What should we change that to in order to Maidu-ize it? Pi. So, what's our new word for a grove of trees or orchard? Chakatopai. Beba moya. Chakatopai. Now let's go down a few more to medium rare. The Konkow word for medium rare, like meat, is kaputo. Do you recognize a Mountain Maidu root in this word? Kap. Be cooked. It even has the same stress. But what about that ending, that puto infix? Do we need to change that? Yes, the Mountain Maidu equivalent is poto, almost. Kapoto, almost cooked. Bebamoya, kapoto. What about a word for rare or not cooked, talking about meat? Go down the list a few more and you'll see the Konkow word for rare, meat, or not cooked is kapmepe. It's the same root, kap, that we just worked with to make medium rare. What would we have to change about kapmepe to Maidu-ize it, to turn it into a Mountain Maidu word? We would replace the me with men, not. Kapmenpe, not cooked or rare. Bebamwep, kapmenpem sumi. If you go through these on your own, you'll see that some of your new Mountain Maidu words end up being exactly the same as the Konkow word. Now, when I talk about adapting the stress to a known related Mountain Maidu word, what if you don't know any possibly related words? Well, then just borrow the word straight across. It's better than not having the word at all, even if the stress may not be right to an old-timer. On page 166, I'll draw your attention to the schwa. That's the name for the upside-down E that you see in some Konkow and Nisenan words, but it's not written in Mountain Maidu. The schwa sounds like the U in uncle, Notice that's not exactly the same sound as the fish head, which is In English, we do have the schwa sound, but we spell it all different ways. U as in uncle and bud. The last A in the word abundant has the schwa sound. The shun in action has the schwa sound, Tion. So when you see the upside down E in Konkow or Nisenan, that's the sound you want to make, When borrowing a Konkow or Nisenan word with a schwa, just use the fish head for the schwa. Pretty close. The word list on page 166 to 168 is just practice in borrowing without knowing the related Mountain Maidu word. Last in this lesson on Konkow borrowing is mentioning suffixes or endings. You'll be putting Mountain Maidu endings on the words, and some of these don't exist in Konkow. For example, dome is a Mountain Maidu ending, and Konkow is just going to use the N ending instead for the same meaning. If you look at a Konkow dictionary and find a verb ending in N, you're going to have to take that off and replace it with dome to make it a Mountain Maidu word. The dome ending doesn't exist in Konkow, and Mountain Maidu does not put an N on the end of a verb as a suffix. For more information about Konkow grammar, go to Appendix B starting on page 266, which lays out a comparison of Mountain Maidu and Konkow grammar, going by chapters in the Mountain Maidu grammar book. On pages 170 to 171, there are some interesting lists that show you how some words are totally different in the two languages. For example, in section 9J, it's good to know that heli means big in Konkow, but the word in Mountain Maidu is tete. The word for good in Konkow is wene, but in Mountain Maidu, it's yaha. The word for the number 1 in Konkow is wukte, but in Mountain Maidu, it's suti. Go through the rest of Lesson 9 in the Modern Maidu workbook, and you will learn some new things about Konkow. We just don't have time to go through everything in the video. Now, how do you get a hold of Konkow words or borrow in the first place, you might ask? There's a website called konkow.org. Create an account there and log in. I've not explored this site as much as I should, but if you're interested in Konkow, check it out. I'm told you can do a lot more if you log in and you can search on words. And again, I will post links and files on our Facebook page where you can get Konkow words. Note that these sources don't write in fish heads, so you have to remember that J means Y, Y means fish head, and there might be a question mark type symbol where we write an apostrophe. Now let's do the same thing with Nisenan. I know it's a lot to cover in one lesson, going through both sister languages looking for words to borrow, but what you need to do is really similar for both languages. Turn to page 174 in the Modern Maidu workbook. Some Nisenan words are exactly like Mountain Maidu. Now, keep in mind that Nisenan has several dialects. Different dialects of the same language pronounce words a little differently, sort of like someone speaking California English might notice a southern accent of an English speaker from Georgia or a British accent of somebody from England. But we can still understand each other, so we call them dialects instead of separate languages. For example, I see Sawi in this list for river, but I also know that the Nevada City Rancheria Nisenan spell this S-E-O, seo. Do you see that S-E-O, seo, is pretty close to S-E-W, seo, and pretty close to Sawi? Be ready for some variations besides what is in this chapter. Nisenan has complicated rules about word stress. If you look at a Nisenan dictionary, the word stress might not even be marked. That's because it can change when you add endings to a word. So, once again, if you can find a related Mountain Maidu word, use the Maidu stress when borrowing from Nisenan. That's discussed on page 175. Now, obviously, if you don't know a related word in Maidu, you just have to do your best on guessing where the stress should be. There are plenty of words to practice with on pages 176 to 177. Let's do one of these together. On page 176, about halfway down the list, is the Nisenan word for scarf women use in dancing. This word's been lost in Maidu, so we can borrow the Nisenan word, tokno, which is written in a Nisenan dictionary with no stress marks. We have a word in Maidu, tokno, meaning have the hand under, like women hold the scarves when they dance. So we can use the stress from the Maidu word tokno when we borrow the word for scarf. Bebamwea tokno, scarf. On page 178, you can learn about vowel length in Nisenan. We're going to skip over this for the video, but please read about it if you're interested. On page 180, we encounter the schwa again. Remember, that's the upside down E that Konkow also has, and it's pronounced like the U in uncle. When borrowing Nisenan words with a schwa, change the schwa into a fish head. At the bottom of page 180, you have the chance to borrow words from Nisenan and change the schwa to a fish head. Back in lesson 2, we talked about how Nisenan often cuts off the last vowel of a word. On page 181, we can see some examples. where a word is almost the same in Nisenan and Mountain Maidu, but Nisenan cuts off the last vowel. I, the kind of I you see with, in Mountain Maidu is hini. In Nisenan, it's hin. Heart is honi in Mountain Maidu and just hon in Nisenan. Water is momi in Mountain Maidu, but it's just mom in Nisenan. So when you borrow a noun from Nisenan, you might want to add a vowel at the end. For example, over on page 182, a little more than halfway down the page, say we want a word for condor, the bird, which has been lost in Mountain Maidu, but Nisenan has a word, kolk. How would you Maidu-ize this word when borrowing it? Add an I at the end, kolki. Nisenan has a long O sound. We can tell by the colon after the O. We're not sure what it would look like in Maidu. We could make it a long vowel like Nisenan. Kolki, condor. Bebamwep, kolki. Let's go over to page 185 and take a look at the infixes in Nisenan. Infixes that are the same in both Maidu and Nisenan include chick, doi, dao, kit, koi, men, mit, no, pai, pin, sip, ti, to, and ta. So a lot of them are the same. Then there's a list of Nisenan infixes that are different from Maidu infixes. Be unable to do is maka in Nisenan, but chui in Mountain Maidu. Almost do is poto in Nisenan, but poto in Mountain Maidu. Want to do is daka in Nisenan, but yaha in Mountain Maidu. Pretend to do is tete in Nisenan, but kukus in Maidu. So if you're borrowing a word from Nisenan into Mountain Maidu, you may have to convert the infix if it's different from Mountain Maidu, just like you had to do for Konkow. And that's another way we Maidu-ize when we borrow. In the chart where you're making up new words, the third column, convert infix, has a dash if you can just use the same infix as Nisenan. All these are done for you because it's hard. We don't really know Nisenan, and now we're having to jump through 2 hoops to get those words. But I just want you to know some of your options for getting words we don't have and words that have been lost in Mountain Maidu. There's some interesting stuff on the next few pages, details about Nisenan that you might want to know about, so you can go over those pages on your own. Turn to page 188 and let's look at some words that are different in the 2 languages. Section 10K. Big is ne in Nisenan, but tete is big in Mountain Maidu. Ne means mother in both languages. Good is wene in Nisenan, yaha in Maidu. One is wite or wukte in Nisenan, and sati in Maidu. Please add wukte here in your workbook. I left it out. It's not wukte in all the dialects, but definitely in some. Wukte. On the next page, under New Word Needed, halfway down is Monday, which can be borrowed from Nisenan, based on the number 1. Nisenan actually has a word for each day of the week based on a number. This chart on page 189, where we're borrowing more words from Nisenan, has you changing the word root and sometimes also the infix. These are word roots that are different between the 2 languages. So now you have to be on your toes to know what to change it to. For example, the first one has you changing both the word root and infix. We want a word for not be able to stop or be unable to quit. In Nisenan, we have this word, hatimaka. You might remember that the maka infix in Nisenan equals the chui infix in Mountain Maidu, not be able to do. So we'll have to convert that. But also from the list just above on this page, we can see the Nisenan word for quit is hati, where in Mountain Maidu, it's Heket. So, how will your new word look when you borrow it from Nisenan and Maidu-ize it? Well, it's done for you, but hopefully you see what's going on here. In the fourth column, we have the answer. Heket, meaning not be able to stop doing something. Panpedom heket kas. I can't quit smoking. Bebamweb panpedom heket kas. For Nisenan sources that I will post links to, remember Nisenan had different dialects like Valley Nisenan, Hill Nisenan, Nevada City, Amador County, etc. So expect some variations. Now let's shift gears and talk about formal speeches in Maidu. In the last lesson, we learned how to say prayers in Maidu, both simple everyday prayers and formal prayers that are almost like speeches. You may remember that a Maidu prayer is directed at a non-human entity like Kodom or Bom, and it's asking for something. A formal speech is given in front of a human audience, and it's directed to humans. A formal speech is a lot like a sermon. It can include quotes from the creation story, just like a sermon might have quotes from the Bible. A formal speech can be dramatic and inspirational and educational, and it might stir up emotions with beautiful language. Often, it will express a wish for ourselves or somebody else. Dan Williams has 3 formal speeches in the Shipley recordings. We're only going to listen to one where he tells us what heaven is like. Let's listen to Dan Williams talking about Epinikoyo, the meadow above, which is the way to say heaven as well as sky.
Nisan ganges Epinikoyo ganges Yahangoro di Lismapem Wonomen kum maidem Wonomen kum koroidi Amam Wonodom Wono koy manim munikikan min unim banakpem hubo slide doa amapem gas koydom amadi kang gano mudi usita mapem wono koydom adom sita dom te konim munikan yom banak dodom yokati pem yom ayaram buo muni ayaram buo ko muni yahang godom wonamen kun goro idi amapema adong kakan goro ya pem maidem goro ya pem kakan kai wonom uning goro puktidom adom uning yamani tatenom yamani busupkitdom om yamani busupkitdom aten momi hakit koyonam koram bonis no kiri betei tadi koram koydom amam adom unim helam putsakam yamani panim mesim yamani makan beldenim wasippenim yamani amana norom anim yokol danum yamanim awonam kabum botonam boas kudoy amana ni koydom papai de mitdom sap ku wotonde ben kit wonong solong kan katipam wina ben sitodom ben kit wonong aten amana ni koydom Siitä dom altroisim henantedi altroisim vodoinum ja mannodi. Unimmata uninka kymmas torojapen. Amanik Modern Maidu ni kinisopaita. Adon korom yaakmaamani kakas unim simpanin kakas pup maafamata. Adon amat korom yaham mamuni pea adon kas unina tasita maafam korom janna tasita no maafam ni kanin kakas. No more.
Now, let's go over it sentence by sentence. First sentence.
Nisan kanges happening godi kanges yahan gorodi lismapen wonomen kum maidem wonomen kum gorodi
Epinin coyote kayankes yaham korori bismapem. Asi maikare. In the meadow above, we can live in a good land. Kayankes bismapem. We can live. Now, a note about Epinin koyo, the meadow above. Epin means sky. Epinim is the adjective describing koyo, meadow or valley. Epinin koyo, the meadow above, or the sky meadow. Now, from the Tom Young stories, here's an example of epin by itself meaning sky. Epin chedonudon, continuously looking up at the sky. That comes out of one of those stories. There's also a verb, hepin, sometimes spelled epin, that means go back home. Here are some examples from the old Tom Young stories. Hunmo hepinkitdom, coming home from hunting. Gere hepinkoikum bom, a coming back from grazing path. Bom, describing an animal path, where they're coming back home from grazing. Kulumini muhun epinmotoro, when it got dark, coming home from hunting together. Epinimotoro. Lewo mom he epinimotoro, some of them coming home together from fishing. Fishing being water hunting here. Mom he, water hunting. Lewo meaning some of them. Also, we know that epin as a verb can mean ask. So, it's an interesting word. I'm intrigued that the word epininkoyo can not only mean the sky meadow, but can also mean the going home meadow. Back to the rest of our sentence. Wonomenkum maidam, wonomenkum korori. Asi maikare. As a never-dying people, wonomenkum maidam, in a never-dying land, wonomenkum korori. Did you remember that the men infix plus the k ending gets translated as never? We can live in the meadow above. In the meadow above, we can live in a good land as a never-dying people in a never-dying land. Next sentence.
Amam one koi manim muni kikan min unim banakpem hibo slide door amapen gas koidom.
Wono a koi man nimini. Kasi maikade aikakaka. When you go away in death. Wono a koi ma nimini. Notice there's a ma, future infix, in this word. Why? Because you will do this in the future. In English, we don't have to say the will part, when you will go away in death. But in Maidu, we need to add that ma to show it hasn't happened yet. Beba moyep, wono koi ma nimini. Behesadom. What happens next? Kakan min unim banakpem habo, slide door mapem, kaaskoidom. What can be called a sliding door is moving aside for you into this bright, bright house. Kaas means move to one side. Kaasi is a move like in a board game. Bebamoya, kaasi. Add the infix koi, and it means that sliding door will be swept aside for you. Kakan min kaaskoidom. It is moving aside for you. Bebamoya, kakan min kaaskoidom. Now, Dan Williams didn't have to use English here. He could have made up a word for a sliding door with genuine Maidu parts. What could he have called it? Kaaskoike. When you die, when you go away in death, what can be called a sliding door is moving aside for you to this bright, bright house. Next sentence.
Amadi kangano, Maidu-ize wono koidam.
Kaankano Maidu-ize mapem. Esi maikade. You can cross over or go through. You can cross over there at that place. Amadi and Mudi mean there at that place. As you go away in death. Wono akoido. You can go through there, the door, at that place when you go away in death. Next sentence.
Dom che konim munikan yom. Manak dodom yokati pem yom.
Chehehe koinimini. Esi maikade. When you go off looking all around. Chehehe koinimini. Banak doidom. Esi maikade aikakaka. Starting to be bright or lighting up. Babam weip. Banak doidom. Kan yom banak doidom. Yokachi pem yom. There are flowers lighting up, flowers in full bloom. Yokachi pem yom, flowers in full bloom. I'm kind of guessing the meaning of this word. Yokachi pem. And when you cross over, when you go looking around, there are flowers lighting up, flowers in full bloom. Next sentence.
Ayadam muo muni ayadam. Muo wako muni. Yahan godam. Wonaman kan goro idi amapema.
Ayadam, the way it is now or the way it is here. Ayadam. Bulwomani, when the wind blows. Bulwowokoimani. Esi maikade. When the wind blows its way through and out. Now, because of the muni, we're switching to a different subject. Yaham kodom. Esi maikade yaham kodom aikakaka. It can mean a good world or a good land. But talking about the wind, what else can kodom mean? Weather. Yaham kodom. Wonomen kan korodi amapem. Good weather is said to be in the never-dying land. Now, wind was considered a bad thing, according to the old story of Windman. Wind brought sickness and knocked down trees. But in the never-dying land, heaven, the weather's good. At least that's how I am interpreting this sentence. Now, I'm not sure about the last word he says. Was he starting to say something and changed his mind? I don't know. The way it is now when the wind blows, the way it is now when it blows its way through and out, Good weather is said to be in the never-dying land. Next sentence.
Adong kakan koro yapem maidim koro yapem kakan kai wonom uning koro puk tido adom uning yamani the tenonom yamani usip kitno yamani usip kitno
Adon kakan koroyapem idam koroyapem. In saying so, World Maker Man, the one who created the world, kakan kaiwonom, see maikade. Kai, say that. He had said that. The wonum shows it's completed. Ukinuka. Unin koro puktidom, see maikade. While he was creating the world. Puk is an interesting word. Without any infixes, it means reproduce, procreate, or produce offspring. In the creation story, World Maker tells the people they will produce many offspring. Pukta means be created in the Tamyang stories. Pukti means create, according to Shipley. This word is not found in the Tamyang stories. In the creation stories, as Tamyang told them, he uses ya for create, or hukit, create using thought. Konkow has the word puktin, create, make it happen, and Shipley's dictionary has pukti for create. Pukwono means be born. That's why you tell someone, Yahat bispada minki pukwono makiri, happy birthday, on the day you were born, your born day, minki pukwono ekiri. So, kakan kaaiwonom uninkoro puktidom adom, he had said that while he was creating the world, adom unim yamani, tetenonom yamani, besupkidom, om yamani besupkidom, that he set down this mountain, big mountains, and that he set down the mountain peaks, om yamani, mountain peaks. Notice the word besupkidom, setting in place. Creator set the mountains and peaks, om yamani, in place. And this word, besupkid, reminds me of the very similar word, besop, blow on, to blow out the evil spirits. So I don't know if they're related. He had said that when he created this world, that he set down the mountains, big mountains, and that he set in place the mountain peaks. Next sentence.
Aten momi hakit ikoy wonam koram monik no kiri betay tadi koram ikoydom.
Awetin momi hekit akoy wonom. Then, having gone off laying down water, hekit akoy, go off laying something down. Hekit means lay something down, not to be confused with heket, which means stop doing. The rest of the sentence is korom bodigno kadi betetodi, korom akoidom. Bodigno ke, hesi maikade aikakaka. Bo is road or path, dikno is arrive at. Shipley translates bodigno ke as target or goal. Bebamwe bodigno ke, target or goal. Kodom bodikno kadi, to the target land, or the land target, that is, the land which he ultimately wants to arrive at. Kodom bodikno kadi betetodi, in ancient times. Kodom akoidom. Kodom akoidom, Shipley translates this moving over the country, and writes kodo instead of kodom, but I definitely hear an M on the end of kodom. If it didn't have an M, it sure would be a lot easier to translate. Maybe it means world leaving, leaving the world, but I'm not sure about this one. After he had gone off setting down water, he went away to the target land, leaving the world in ancient times. Next sentence.
Amam Adamunim Helam Putraka Yamani Panim Misim Yamani Makan.
Puk, hukinuka, reproduce, procreate, produce offspring. Puksakun, the one that always produces or reproduces. Bebamoya, helam puksakum yamani. That one, world maker, saying, this abundantly providing gambling mountain shall be this tobacco habitat mountain. Next sentence.
Beldenim Wasipinim Yamani. Amana Noram Anim You called Anum Yamanim Awonam.
You may remember that will sip means go by as time goes by. This verb is found a lot in the old Tom Young stories, always with the meaning of time going by. But here, Dan Williams says, Mumbeldenim Wosipinim Yamani, which means a mountain just past Belden, or just above Belden. Bebamwea, Mumbeldenim Wosipinim Yamani. Yokoli is flag, like the traditional flag at the bear dance. Yokoltanum is flag being continuously on top. Yokoltanum Yamanim, flag on top, mountain. Do you know this mountain near Belden? Does it still look like a flag at the top? The just past Belden mountain, traveling from there, that flag on top mountain, it was called. Awonam, it was called. Next sentence.
Kabum Boatonum Boas Mudoy. Amana Nicoidum Papai de Mitdum Sap to Watonde. Bankit Wanong Solong again. Jatipam.
Caribou Bowl, Caribou Road, which still exists, and you can find it on a map. Ochonum, having gone over. Now Dan Williams is referring to World Maker's journey through the Mountain Maidu land. Aswa means being near, on the outskirts. Amanan, Akoidon, going from there. Wayayawe, Caribou Bowl, Ochonum, Aswadoi, Amanam, Okoidon. Papaidi Mitdon, going down into Papa. Papa is the Maidu word for yampa, an edible native root, as you could see in the picture. Papai is a place name where World Maker stopped to eat papa and scattered seeds and bulbs to grow for the people. This was during World Maker's journey in the creation story. It could be in the Willards Ranch area along Highway 36. See Map 1 in Appendix 5 in the back of the dictionary, where there's a few maps showing any Maidu place names I could get. Sihapka Wochonodi, in the area around Sihapka. Shipley said Sihapka was Nevis Island, now under Lake Almanor, in the Canyon Dam area, but other sources say Sihapka is in the Westwood Mill Pond area, or Mountain Meadows. See Map 3 in Appendix 5 in the back of the dictionary. Sihapka Wochonodi, Benkit Wono. Ben means step. Benkit, step down, put your foot down. Benkit Wonum, having put his foot down. Solong Kakancha Tipem, the footprint is visible. We have learned solo as shoe, but it can also mean footprint, where a creator's footprint could be seen. Just past si hapka. Beba moya, ben kit wonom, solong kakan chetipem. Having gone over Caribou Road, close to there, going off from that place, going down into Papa in the vicinity of Westwood, the footprint where he had stepped down is visible. Next sentence. Having stepped down while he was stepping across towards there. Bensito, step across. Next sentence.
Aten amana koidom sitodom altrosim henantedi altrosim wodoinum yamannodi unim mata unin kakimmas toroyapen
Unim mata hesi maikare. Let this be. Remember that ta ending. This is often used in formal speeches. Let this be. Beba moya. Unim mata. Unim kumas. This I did. Koroyapem. The one who made the world. Then, going off from there, going across to this side of Alturas, to the mountains beyond Alturas. Let this be, this that I, who made the world, did. Next sentence.
Amanik wonam maidum nikinisopaita.
Hupai, try to figure out. Hupai, ponder, think about. And then he adds the ending ta. Let them wonder about me. Think about me. Ama nik wonam maidum nik hupaita. Let human beings think about me because of that. Hupaita. Next sentence.
Adon koram yakimamani kakas unim simpanim simpanin kakas pup mafamata.
Yaku means cloud up. When the world or weather clouds up, koram yakumamani. Notice again the future ma infix. He's talking about when this will happen in the future. Unim simpanim, this beard, beba moya, simpanim. Pupup, be gray. I know this word sounds a little sketchy, but let's say it loud and clear. Pupup, be gray. Hesi maikare, kakas pupup mapim. I can be gray. Hukinu, kakas plus mapem, means I can. Adombe hesi maikare, simpanin kakas, pupup mapem. As a beard, I can be gray. When the world shall cloud up, I am this beard. As a beard, I can be gray, he apparently said. Next sentence.
Adom mat koram yaham mamuni upaya dong kasunina chasita mapem koram janna chasita no mapem.
Amet korom yaha mamani. Hesi maikare. But when the world shall be good, once again, Maidu adds the future infix ma, or English might just say when the world is good, meaning in the future, but not saying it. In Maidu, you do make it clear that you're talking about the future. Yaha mamani, when it will be good. Since we leave the will off in English, it may be a little hard for you to remember to put the ma in Maidu. Mamani, when it will be. Upe yahadon, just as I want. Bebamwea, upe yahadon. Behasadon, then what? Kas uninan chasito mapem. Kas chasito mapem, I can look across. Uninan, from here. Koron chana, chasito nu mapem. Chana, the other side. Koron chana, toward the country's other side. That cha is related to chai, other. Kas koron chana, chasito nu mapem. I can continuously look across toward the other side of the country. That new infix means continuously. Now Shipley translated korom chana as northwards, and korom chandi does mean in the northwest country, but that does not make sense here because World Maker's already passed Alturas. He would not be looking northwest, he would be looking southwest. On the other hand, chana means towards the other side and is related to chai, and that makes perfect sense. Saying, but if the world shall be good, just as I want, I can look across from here, always looking across toward the other side of the land. Last sentence.
Kaninkika. No more.
That's the end. No more. Now, as you can see, a formal speech is educational, inspirational, and beautifully expressed. There are references to the old stories, although not always. The sentences can be long and complex. Usually a formal speech will use the ta ending on some verbs expressing a hope or wish. In this speech, Creator says, let it be, mata, and then let them think about me, nik hupaita. Although Dan Williams ends his speech with kaninkakan, other speeches can end with hewanai, like a prayer. Check out Dan Williams' other two speeches, When the White Man Came and Buckeye and Cedar. We also have a Herb Young speech, but once again, the recording is hard to understand and it's very long. The copy I have is a recording of a recording played in our classroom with a lot of background noise. I will post a link to it anyway, and if you'd like to download it and try to work with it, I'd be glad to help you. People have recently asked me if I have any prayers for a funeral, and I don't. But it makes sense that you might want to make a formal speech at a funeral or a memorial service. This speech by Dan Williams could be given at a funeral, especially the part where he talks about the land above. If you make a funeral speech, remember you're talking to people and you're addressing the audience. You may talk about the person who passed, but just remember not to say their name. You can refer to the person as Unim Oyupaipem, the beloved one, or Jabapim, the one who was missed. It would be nice to say a few good words about the person who passed, some of their accomplishments, how hospitable they were, how they invited people into their homes, fed people, taught people. Maybe they were a dancer or a basket weaver. It would be appropriate to mention those things. Then you could say, may we never forget. Hukichik men ta pe'eh. Notice the ta pe'eh ending, which means may we. Bebamwea. Hukichik men ta pe'eh. Let us not forget. It's okay to mention their spirit journey using the same word Dan Williams uses, wono akoidom. How would you say, may they journey well? Yahat wono akoita. Now, what if you're asked to say a blessing over food? This could be a formal speech. You're talking to a group of people. How would you say, may this food make us healthy?
Unimpecum.
Nise hukuptita. Hukuptita. May it bring us health. Notice the ta ending. Bebam web.
Unimpecum.
Nise hukuptita. How would you say, may it make us strong? Nise eptita. Next lesson will be the last video lesson I will make. You're almost there. Now for homework, please write a short formal speech for the end of a gathering when people are going home. Be sure to express that people came from near and far, and may they travel safely home. Email or message it to me, and I'll go over it with you. Yahat Bispara. Chaiman Chamakasmin.